So, quick note before we get into today's topic. When we originally started this episode, we were intending on it covering a basic overview of the entirety of the First World War, summarizing the key points, some of the key figures, key technologies. About an hour into it, we realized it wasn't going to happen. We only made it to the start of the war, greatly underestimating how big of a history nerd I am. So what will happen is this will end up being the first of a series of episodes. This one just covering, like I said, the lead up to the war, and then there'll be more to come.
There's a little garage on a small town street. I like to meet my friends there every week, and I know we'll talk about some facts and things, history and science and some crazy shit. Talking it out with Alan, Ben, and Nick, and I know that it's gonna be a weird-ass show. Ooh, insanity abounds. Ooh, the world is spinning round. Now we're gonna break it down.
Well,
All right.
today we're talking about the BFW.
BFW?
The BFW, the big fucking war.
The war to end all wars.
If only it had. It would have saved us a lot of issues, but we didn't learn lessons.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we had never seen anything like it.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most important things as a starting point before you get into the politics that lead into this, one of the things that kind of spelled disaster for how World War I was going to play out was the fact that the last major ground conflict was the Franco-Prussian War, which by all intents and purposes was not a modern war. You didn't have things like machine guns, or at the very least, the variants you had were so unwieldy or improperly used that they were more show.
They didn't have the, I don't believe the Maxim gun had been invented yet.
I believe the Gatlin had, though.
Yeah.
That was American
Civil War. Which they exported everywhere they could. Quite a few actually ended up in Japan, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. No, strictly speaking, though, a Gatling gun is not a machine gun. It's a different type of.
For the sake of discussion,
but, yeah.
the idea of a auto firing weapon in that time period, it was still such a new concept. The technologies that were in existence were not properly used. They were still using battle plans based on musket fire.
Oh yeah. You mean we can shoot more than one bullet without reloading every time?
Well, no. They had cased ammunition. And it is important to note that while there were little dust-ups, there were no major ground wars in Europe between the Franco-Prussian War and World War I. There was a relative time of peace. There was some colonial dust-ups. The British had to put a couple down, and that's part of why they were so hesitant to join the war, because they were seeing what these more modern weapons were capable of.
Yeah, now the Boer Wars.
The Franco-Prussian War before or after everything happening over in America?
Civil War?
Civil.
Yeah.
After.
Yeah.
1870.
It was after.
Yeah, in 1870.
Because I was going to say, I know the Civil War led to a lot of our technological advances for America.
A lot of the southern weapons were French arms.
Right.
French-British.
Yeah.
No, in a lot of ways, though, the Civil War gave a taste. The Franco-Prussian War didn't give as much of a taste of modern warfare, mostly because of how quick it is. It was a very rapid war. They didn't have the signs were there. It just didn't go on long enough to, degenerate into things like trench warfare.
They shut it down fast enough.
Yeah, the French basically got their butts kicked at Sedan, and the French Emperor Napoleon III got captured by the Germans.
I really feel bad for the French, because ever since the advent of gunpowder, they've become less and less relevant as a military. Yet they're still respected because they have a fuck ton of guys and guns.
Well, I mean, the Franco-Prussian War was kind of an exception to the rule at that point. I mean, they were still considered one of the major militaries. I mean, going into World War One, they were considered the one country that could go, as far as its army was concerned, toe-to-toe with the German army in terms of size and quality.
And don't get me wrong, the French have done quite a few amazing things militarily over the years. Don't mistake my comment for saying that the French have been outpaced or antiquated. It's not so much that. It's that they seem to play less of a role throughout history the longer it goes on. It seems like they still get involved in conflicts, but they're out of them much quicker.
They definitely peaked in 1815 with the fall of Napoleon.
Yeah.
That was kind of the peak. And after that, they spent the better part of at least 50 years building themselves back up again. And then the Franco-Prussian War happened.
It's sad. The guy's just famous for making the shittiest variety of ice cream.
And France has always been more into the arts and sciences than into the warfare. That just traditionally.
They're into giving babies cigarettes, but...
No, but...
Making camels seem cool.
No, we did get a taste of modern warfare, though, in the end of the Civil War. I know I've mentioned to you before the siege of Petersburg was proper trench warfare before trench warfare.
Oh yeah, no, fully cased ammunition, repeating rifles,
Gatling guns.
Yeah, no,
and the ship technology. Ship technology.
The Ironsiders. Oh my God, I love the story of those things just trading blows for a couple hours, and then finally it's like, nah, the tide takes them because we shouldn't have built these.
Yeah. No, it was the devastating ship technologies that they came up with.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. It's off topic, but I still think the scariest fucking bit of Civil War tech I had ever seen was a huge mortar. This thing's like a foot in diameter, and it launches a ball that would explode and break apart into shrapnel and release grape shot.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Oh yeah, no, it was functionally a shotgun you fired from a mile away and would just decimate an enemy position. This thing, all I can think about is a 1 pound steel ball bearing hitting you in the face. That's so horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but
and that's why conventions of modern warfare and certain things being banned leading up to this war.
I'm pretty sure you can still use flat guns. I'm pretty sure you can still fire shrapnel.
Shrapnel's still a thing.
Yes, you can. Shrapnel was still a thing. But one of the things that was banned as a war crime leading up into this was the use of chemical weaponry. But that's a discussion
after this.
No, there were conventions.
There were conventions before this.
But they were very limited because gas hadn't been used on anywhere near like this scale or in this way.
It was within the separate allies. The alliances had different conventions on them, and we had different conventions than the Germans had at the time.
The international conventions at the time prohibited the use of chemicals, agents in artillery shells, which is why they had the loophole of, well, if we just release gas onto the battlefield, that's technically not in violation of the convention.
We just throw grenades
because it's not
filled
in our
with
artillery.
it.
We're not launching it in a projectile. Now, eventually, once both sides started, rolling out gas canisters, everybody just dropped it completely, and when everybody was breaking the rule, it became a non-rule.
That's a discussion for later on
by the time the Germans were using the second incarnation of gas, they were dropping it so thick that soldiers described it as it turned the air blue. Gas got insane.
Yeah.
But back to the
lead up.
Really, the start of the whole political situation that leads up to what will eventually be World War One is, as you said, the Franco-Prussian War. Because prior to that, you had a system that wasn't really a system of alliances. It was it was a maintained balance of power. They refer to it as the Concert of Europe, been established after Napoleon in 1815. That it remained basically unchanged up until that point, with the exception of the formation of Italy as a country.
Wait, what was Italy before they were Italy? I
thought
Italy was always a country.
Pasta factory.
Bunch of smaller countries.
Huh.
But
I thought Italy was always
united
a company around Rome. A country around Rome.
No, united in the 1860s through a series of wars.
I've learned something
To
today.
my understanding, that's why various regions of Italy dislike other regions
Well, yeah,
of
they
Italy.
spent most of their history being.
To my understanding, it's
different
very
countries.
similar to
Makes
why
sense.
the Scottish hate the Irish hate the Scottish, and everyone says fuck all to the Scotch-Irish.
Because they were stuck
much,
on
yeah.
an island together with nobody to accept each other.
Oh, I'm not saying that they're not dirty cousin fuckers, but so are the British, and this all needs to be acknowledged.
Okay,
You
to
know,
be
speaking
fair,
of cousin fuckers, we should point out that pretty much every world leader was a cousin at
To
this
be
point.
fair,
The monarchs,
all
yeah,
of-
we're all related. Or a lot of them
look
were.
at Europe. You had tiny countries. Everybody was related to everybody in some way or another. That's just kind of how Europe worked. And then they started interbreeding
you are at least
between each other.
14th cousins with everyone
Yeah.
on the planet.
No,
Right.
But,
Think about that.
yeah, but like I said, other than
And think about why you have a stigma against it.
other than the emergence of Italy, which eventually got treated to great power status formally, but it wasn't that big of an upset.
Just saying, you just
argued
for, not against.
The balance of power was basically had 5 countries. You had France, Prussia, Austria, which eventually changed its name to Austria-Hungary for various internal political reasons, and then Russia. And in the early part of that, there were actually several they
Were
called
they
them congresses.
Austria, and then the war used up so much of their resources they became Hungary?
No.
No,
That's
just no.
that's getting removed.
Yes.
We're leaving the comments about we're removing your comment just to shame you publicly, but that's all. There's just going to be a redacted, and then that's it. I'm not even gonna do it again. I'm just going to clone that from the recording and use that in there. So deal with it. Deal with it. You
No,
know your
and,
fate.
I think I may have failed to mention Britain in that list, which would be odd because it's the most powerful of the 5.
USA. USA.
Wasn't jack
USA
shit back then.
didn't come until 2 years later. Well, actually, at this point, I think we're more like
Well, right now we're talking about
3 or
the
4 years later.
well, right now we're talking about the 1870s with the Franco-Prussian War.
Okay, so this is
Russia,
well before.
at this point, America just got done blowing itself to pieces in a civil war. But
We
no,
got bored. We had to practice war.
yeah, and basically, with these 5 countries, they all kind of balance each other. So you really didn't have there were any really system of alliances. It was just a matter of each country. The other 4 would always try to check and balance the 5th if any one of the 5 tried to get out
We're
of
just
line.
gonna agree that we're not gonna get along, but we're also gonna agree we're not gonna blow each other up.
Yeah, or we're going to make sure nobody else goes Napoleon on us.
Well, one of the things that came about after the Franco-Prussian War was this weird intermixing, intertwined web of treaties, where it wasn't always so much that you had a treaty with someone, but you had a treaty with someone who had a treaty with someone else, and it started affecting actions
Yeah.
in
Well,
weird ways.
it's-
People realized that global politics were just that, global. And the things
Oh,
that
they had
you and
already
your
neighbors-
neighbors-
hit that point well before then.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's when
but
mass
Napoleon was
communication.
what really
Oh, yeah, no-
nailed it home was the fact that we have to start having global politics and reacting with each other because this actually does.
Oh, I feel you can argue well before that.
Oh yeah, you can make an argument for something like the
I'd be willing to start arguing for things like around the time of Alexander the Great, where he's just roving across the globe, establishing new trade routes, just being
that's still a more of a regional thing. Simply, you got to get to at least the age of exploration and the discovery of the New World
He
in
never
order for it to
even
get
hit
truly
the water.
global.
I don't know.
Things like the French and Indian War.
I give the Romans a lot of credit.
Yeah, but even they.
But when you get to the
Their
end of the
ability
day,
to
even the Roman Empire wasn't that massive when you consider a global scale.
They were trading. They were trading with Africa. They were trading with Asia.
Yeah, but it was very, very on an individual
Limited.
basis. It wasn't. There was no serious diplomatic contact. It was traders over the course of years, and it was.
I feel it's the foundation where the building is put upon. I feel it's
Wherever
the
it
start.
starts.
But yeah,
Anyways,
it
all
can
right,
be
brings
debated.
us to
Anyways,
Yeah.
talking about what the system of alliances really happened in 2 stages, and the first stage was at the end of the war, the Franco-Prussian War after Prussia allied with most of the other German states, other than Austria, if you want to count Austria in that, defeats France.
I'm sorry, did you say Russia or Prussia?
Prussia.
Gotcha.
Prussia.
They're so similar.
Yeah.
They're very different places, I assure
They're
you.
very different
Yeah.
places, but the name is so
Well,
similar, and I
the
don't
name
always
actually
hear
has
the
Slavic
difference.
origins, but I digress. They beat the French, and the entire war had been orchestrated by Otto von Bismarck, the Prussian minister-president, what we'd call the prime minister, explicitly for the purpose of uniting the German states, giving them a common cause to unite around. Basically provoked Emperor Napoleon III, basically simply pissed him off in a letter, enough to get him to declare war. It worked, and they won. And then in Versailles, the Palace of Versailles, outside of Paris, in the Hall of Mirrors,
where
German
French
princes-
nobles used to piss.
The German princes and kings all proclaimed King Wilhelm I of Prussia to be the first German emperor.
King Wilhelm! Emperor Wilhelm.
You do have to give it to the Germans. They know how to name shit. They
have
really
awesome
do.
names.
All right. Well, considering all their monarchs are either Wilhelm, Frederick Wilhelm, or Wilhelm Frederick, or some other weird combination of Wilhelm and Frederick.
Hey, don't mess with success. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Uh,
Germans are practical people.
That's specifically Prussians. I don't want to piss off any Bavarians or Wittenbergers, but
You know, that's actually kind of fun because I don't have experience to this time period because they're all dead. Sorry, but I'm young and that's how that works. But I've met people that grew up in the Soviet Union in countries that were absorbed by the USSR, and they were born when it was its own independent place, were around for the fall of the Soviet Union, either be it in America or still over there. And they would get so upset if you called them Russian, if they were say Ukrainian. It was just the gravest of insults. And I have to believe that is still the case for this time period because people never
Well,
change.
personal pride.
Oh yeah, no, that's another weird thing about far later when America joins this. Certain people, you can see them signing up, going over there to protect their ancestral homeland, and then you see people where it's that's my second cousin you want me to shoot at.
oh yeah, I mean, you look at the demographics in America and what areas were more wanted to stay out of the war, say with the Germans, and which ones were for the Entente, and it very much lines up with ethnic background.
Well, yet another
Very much.
reason it took America so long to get into the
that's-
war
that's
was
one of those things
because
about
they
this.
had allies on both sides.
That's
They had
that's
family on both sides.
That's one of those things about this time period, whether people want to acknowledge it as a good thing, bad thing, an indifferent thing. People drew lines based on where they were from, what people looked
Family.
like from that area. Yeah, no,
family.
As-
Blood
as-
is thicker than water. That was the old
Well,
saying.
and you had a lot of
it didn't matter where you were from.
well, a lot of the immigration was fairly recent, so you had people who were only were either first or second or maybe third generation.
Yeah, no, I
So
believe
they
I
still had
believe
roots.
at this point in
First
U.S.
and
history, the
second.
Irish were just finally considered human.
Well, yeah. I mean, the Irish started all the way back in the 1840s, but they were still coming in.
I believe
They were
hate
still
had
coming
been
in.
moved on to the Chinese at that point.
Yeah, and others. And a lot of German immigration around the turn of the century. So
Mexicans
in the
too.
Midwest where we live.
Huge number of Germans in the U.S. at the turn of the century.
That was also where the whole Mexican prejudice first started.
Well, a whole aside, and it's still a little bit early for that, but part of the reason that there were American fascist movements or sympathetic to the fascist movements in Europe was due to the high number of German immigrants, people from these places where this was the predominant ideology.
Oh yeah. No, but anyways, so we had Prussia unites the German states at the end of the Franco-Prussian War.
Continue,
and-
gentlemen. I gotta pee.
Okay.
We're leaving that in.
But
Okay, now that's the adults in the room.
Once you had Prussia unite with all those other German states, this was immediately followed by a period of deliberate industrialization by the new Germany. And this basically took an area of Central Europe where you had a second-tier major power, a great power in Prussia, and a bunch of small states suddenly immediately rose to the top of the heap as the most powerful country in Europe, right in the middle of it,
That
which
is one of the
completely upset the power balance.
That is one of the more fascinating things about Germany's history. Any time that it's not having the ever-loving piss kicked out of it by the rest of the world, Germans are doing great. Like they have their shit together culturally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And basically at this point in time, Germany, up till about I believe the 1890s, when Otto von Bismarck was now the office of German Chancellor rather than Prussian Minister President. Although he was still Prussian Minister President, the individual German states retained their autonomy and their own rulers. So there was still a king of Saxony, a king of Bavaria, a king of Württemberg, and the Kaiser was still king of Prussia as well. But Bismarck basically ran that country through force of will. One of the reasons they had a lot of political problems after he was out, because the system was designed for somebody with his sheer personality to be able to control it, and they never found anything like that again.
How much of his authority do you believe came from his facial hair?
No, but so basically when you have the Bismarckian era with Germany, actually managed things pretty well. The man was a political bloody genius. The first system of alliances actually went into place after the Franco-Prussian War. Were basically all directed against France because it was led by Germany. And there was a thing called the Three Emperors Alliance, which was between Germany, Russia, and Austria-Hungary. And that was basically Bismarck's whole core element of his diplomacy was he even said the one best thing you can do for a diplomat is make a good treaty with Russia, because the Russians are just so huge and powerful and all that. Once he had the alliance,
especially at the time, Russia was even more of a major power than they are now.
Than they are now?
Since nuclear proliferation, Russia's
I was going to
stepped
say, if you take nukes out of the equation, then yes, you are very much right. The Russian army of that era could do a shit ton more than the Russian army today, proportionally speaking.
And that's what I'm talking about, is in that era, they were much more powerful.
They were considered...
correct me if I'm wrong, at the start of the war, Russia started with a standing army of 12 million, wasn't it?
Oh, not even close. That's way too big a number.
I thought they were one of the ones who showed up with a huge amount at the start.
They did show up with a huge amount,
The standing army
but not
prior
that
to the
many.
war, before the call-up of reserves...
I think it was 1.2 million.
Expanding of the military would have been about 1 million.
I want to say it's 1.2 million. You moved the decimal point.
Yeah.
Because that sounds right.
That's got to be what it is. The German standing army prior to World War I was only about 700,000 men.
Okay, yeah, no, I probably moved a decimal point.
Yeah, no, but...
I'm an idiot.
So one of the reasons you had peace in Europe for all that time was because you had this system of alliances where Germany was on good terms with both Russia and Austria. Britain had a standing policy of wanting to stay out of continental affairs to the best of its ability, unless something like Napoleon popped up again.
Well, that and they were dealing with their own dust-ups in their colonies.
Well, yeah, that's where most of their...
They were always busy with the empire.
Yeah, I mean, they would eventually they had issues with France and Russia, but those were colonial issues, not continental ones.
Yeah. Everybody kind of understood the idea of don't shit where you eat.
Yeah. So that basically just isolated France, which had no allies or anything because Germany was on good relations with everybody else. And that kind of kept the peace until Wilhelm II came to the throne. He actually it was Wilhelm I's grandson. His father, Frederick, became Kaiser and then died about a month later of throat cancer. And oddly enough, because of his British wife, he was married to Victoria's eldest daughter of the same name. She basically turned him into a progressive, and if he had actually lived, he probably would have moved Germany on the path of becoming a constitutional monarchy, like Britain is.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but the dude died of throat cancer a month after becoming Kaiser. So his son, who, given his poor relationship with his parents, gravitated very heavily towards his authoritarian grandfather, and Bismarck was very much the authoritarian as opposed to his father, and he got into power. He was also a giant crybaby, and that's not much of an exaggeration. The man was prone to mood swings, and
he's just very emotional right now.
In a way, he was kind of Trump-esque. It was not too much of a stretch to say that.
Proto-Trump? Back when Trump was still Trump?
To be fair, Trump has been likened to many.
As far as his demeanor is concerned,
of
somebody who
worst leaders in history.
But as far as his demeanor, the man was very much like I said, he could swing back and forth. Wasn't very strong-willed. He could be.
Did he ever try to build a wall?
No.
No, but he used Russian spies.
He built a canal. A very large canal.
Was there a PP Super 8?
No.
He did use Russian spies.
But anyway, he once he gets in there, he clashes with Bismarck on a lot of stuff, and eventually ends up dismissing him. At which point, you really don't have anybody anywhere near the political acumen coming on the political scene for the entire rest of Germany's existence up through the war. I think in 1906 or 7, a man named Bettman Hollweg comes into the chancellorship and is chancellor all the way up through most of the war. But basically, Wilhelm gets in his idea that two things. He starts supporting the Austrians instead of the Russians when they start having disagreements in the Balkans, which starts to alienate the Russians who
well, to be fair, the Austrians are right next door to him.
So
the
are the
Russians are further off.
Nope, so are the Russians.
Were they at that point?
They're sharing a border.
They share a border with both.
Back up.
In actual practical terms, especially with hindsight, he should have gone with the Russians. It's a much better ally to have. It makes sense with the Austrians.
Oh, yeah, they do share a border there.
Well,
but
there's a question there because how much of we have the benefit of knowing how things play out, but how many of the wheels in Russia were already turning that the war just sped things up?
Well, and at the time, what did Wilhelm know, and what did he assume? And you've already said he was very.
Well, it's not so much Wilhelm; it's what Bismarck assumed.
Well, this is after Bismarck we're talking about now.
Oh,
because Bismarck was smart enough to keep an alliance with both Russia and Austria.
You said Wilhelm was the one who was easily swayed and controlled and stuff. So So not knowing what his advisors were telling him and stuff, he may have assumed that Austria was the way to go.
Well, it was less a matter of that, and it was more a matter of, well, part of it was also the Balkan issues hadn't come up yet. The Ottomans still ruled most of that territory. They didn't start losing control of all that until after Bismarck was off the scene.
Yeah.
And because before then, even when the Ottomans were starting to decline, and Serbia and Romania and Greece all emerged as countries, you still had kind of a three-way balance between Austria, Russia, and the Ottomans balancing each other's interests.
Yeah, to my understanding, the reason Germany's side with Austria was due to cultural similarities, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, because Austrians...
Yeah, shared language was the biggest one, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And they had been allies pretty much since about 1870. Or so, after the Prussians beat the Austrians in the Austro-Prussian War. But anyways, so once the Russians kind of get the cold shoulder from the Germans, because the Germans had to pick between them or the Austrians, they kind of naturally gravitate over towards the French, who are still looking for an ally, which is kind of odd in that you now have Republican France allied with the the Russian autocracy.
Wait, the French are Republicans?
Yeah, France became a republic after the Franco-Prussian War. and has been so since, unless you count what happened during World War II. But
I thought at the time
I do.
thought at the time they were still running a matriarch or a.
No,
monarchy,
they murdered
monarchy.
the ever-loving shit out of their monarchs.
Well, the last one, Napoleon III, Emperor Napoleon III. Like I said, he got captured at the Battle of Sedan in the Franco-Prussian War, and after that happened, the people back in Paris just said, "Okay, we're a republic again.
We're done with this.
Yeah.
We're done with
you got
in charge."
you got our butts kicked and got yourself captured, and we didn't like you all that much at this point, anyways. So now you're just calling."
Thanks for revolutionizing our culture. Bye.
So that's where you
pretty
get
reasonable to me.
That's where you get the origins of the Russian-French Entente, which was formed in the 1880s, I want to say, late 80s, when that started to happen, when the Three Emperors Alliance was canceled. Either that or the early 90s. Sorry, I don't remember more specifically about that. But then the other big mistake Wilhelm makes is he decides Germany, despite having never been a naval power before, Germany needs a navy. In this weird way, he thought by building a navy to rival the British, that would make the British like him and want them as an ally, rather than what actually happened, where rather than the British being kind of natural allies to the Germans, all of a sudden they were now a naval threat.
To be fair, it makes sense.
Camp.
The German Empire has a fair amount of coastline.
Yeah, but it.
Yes, a lot of it is ice covered over by Sweden, Norway, Finland.
Well, it's a matter of
Finland.
Prussia before,
Russian
and then
Empire.
Germany had never had. It was never a colonial power. They didn't have interests overseas. All their interests were with their immediate neighbors, so they didn't need a navy.
Well, that's why they developed close naval encounter ships instead of distant ships, the way the others
well, no,
did.
they
That's
started
part
building
of what led to the submarine and the U-boat and all of that.
Undersea Putin.
Undersea Putin.
No, but well, I mean, that was part of it. They, along with
Because
Italy,
they developed their navy in very specific ways because of where they were geologically and who they had to compete with.
Well, I mean, it never became a fully ocean-going fleet. Though they had battleships. That was the whole core of the naval arms race that happened. It was between the British and the Germans to see how many battleships they could build.
But the German Navy was never built to go across the sea. That was the difference.
Well, no, it was. That was part of the point.
That was
They
much
built. They
later.
tried to build it. They tried to build. They never fully succeeded because they were starting from scratch, and the British already had one. They tried to build a navy that, at the very least, could make its way around the world, because they did eventually start picking up colonies. They picked up a few in Africa and then some islands and stuff in the Pacific. And so they ended up building themselves a small colonial empire, although it was never anywhere near as big as the British or French ones.
Well, they had quite a bit of a head start.
Yeah, they basically got the leftovers.
The important thing to take away here is the British don't really appreciate challenges to their authority.
Yeah, that is the takeaway here.
When it comes down to it, that was their problem with France.
Germany
that was their problem with Spain. That was their problem with Germany.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the thing to take away from this is that Germany went from a position where it had very good relations with both Russia and Britain, and due to the implementation of policies which are
Mostly
arguably,
it was joining Austria and Hungary.
It's arguable
if they
that
hadn't joined them, they may have stayed on.
Well,
the better
okay,
side of
the increasing their navy would have pissed off Britain either way.
Yeah, that was a mistake they made that they never should have thought.
Yeah,
they pissed off the British and drove them into the arms of France.
But that was something they could have dealt with politically if yes, it was one more stone on the pile.
Yeah,
but that in itself wouldn't have broken the camel's back, and it didn't.
Well,
there were many other things that led into
actually,
it as well.
it really was between Britain and Germany. Germany and Britain, Prussia before it, especially, had always been relatively close countries. They tended to be allies, had similar interests. It's only once Wilhelm started building that bloody navy that the British all of a sudden was like, whoa, you can't do this. This is a threat to us.
He built a military navy, not a merchant navy.
Well, I mean, every country has a merchant navy, but any country that trades has a merchant fleet. But no, I mean, it was a military.
Imagine how the U.S. would respond if somebody tried to rival our naval might.
Yeah, no, if somebody started building battleships.
We'd be kind of royally pissed.
If somebody started building battleships and stuff, this was clearly a military buildup. This was clearly a military buildup.
Yeah. Anyways, so out of those two diplomatic faux pas, if you will, like I said, France and Russia end up on one side, and then Germany is forced to basically strengthen its ties with Austria, which at this point is its only remaining ally. Although eventually they do enter another three-way alliance, referred to simply as the Triple Alliance. It was a defensive alliance rather than an offensive one.
The Triple Entente, I believe, yes?
No, the Triple Alliance. Something different I'll talk about.
I apologize.
Between Germany, Austria, and Italy.
Yes.
Which initially Germany and Italy had a commonality because they were both young new countries.
I do feel it's worth pointing out that because I do know what you're talking about here. I just mistook the name for a second. When Italy joined this, one of the things they recommended as a alteration of the language of it was that the members would only respond if a member country was invaded, not if they were the attacker. The idea basically being, look, if someone attacks you, you're my bro, come help you.
We'll defend our own.
You fuck someone else's backyard up, that's on you, bro.
Yeah, it was we defend our own.
You pooped on his stoop. What did you expect?
Well, and that's what it was. It was a defensive treaty. And that's why when World War I starts, Italy, one of the reasons, the excuse they used to opt out is that Austria attacked Serbia. Therefore, the terms of the defensive treaty do not apply. The other thing was, it made some vague sense for Germany and Italy to be close countries. As I said, they had that being the new kids on the block thing in common. Italy has always had serious territorial ambition towards Austria, and in fact, a large part of the territory that formed Italy when it became a country was taken from Austria. So both of them.
Really?
Yeah. Northern Italy was part of the Habsburg Empire. Yes.
Habsburg. Okay.
Yeah, the Habsburg Austrians.
That makes sense. I forgot that was so close to this time period.
Yeah,
Habsburg's long running.
I was gonna say, wasn't that a couple of hundred years?
Yeah, long running family.
The Habsburgs have been dominating Europe through marriages and being Holy Roman emperors and shit for like 500 years.
I know a bit about the Habsburg Empire from my own historical stuff.
Various
but that
cultures
back further than this.
If various cultures are sports teams, they are the owners of the white team. They're the ones making the big bucks off of the actual league champs. Sorry, everyone else. I didn't write history. Don't blame me.
Yeah, but we're unfortunately every member of the team is a member. All members of the same family. Because incest. Got to keep those bloodlines pure.
Game of Thrones, bitch. Game of Thrones,
we
bitch.
keep
Game of Thrones,
around
bitch.
it. I know we're getting close to the rundown of Declaration of War, but there's a couple of more things we got to cover first.
Well, yeah, because that's like you said. We said the breakdown due to Wilhelm of the Bismarckian alliance system leads to what eventually becomes the Triple Entente. The French, Russian Entente gets expanded to include Britain.
Britain, France, and
Russia.
Spain mostly, and Russia.
No, not
Spain was
neutral.
Wasn't it?
Spain's neutral in both world wars.
Really?
Spain was dealing with its own internal bullshit at this point. They really weren't a great power anymore.
Huh. I'm gonna have to go look that up because I could have sworn Spain was included in both sections because of their proximity to France and the war front.
Nope.
You would have thought they'd have been minimally a part of. Because of the stuff going on in France.
Like I said, they were dealing with their own internal civil wars and crap like that at this point. They really stopped being a factor after the 1820s when they lost their most of their colonial empire.
You've got to remember, during every single large-scale European conflict, there are neutral countries. There always are.
Most of my world history goes back before that. It's early days in colonial stuff. I haven't really
that's the era with Spain
that late.
is number one.
Yeah, no, Spain is definitely a power in my own.
They basically fell off the
base.
radar after the Napoleonic Wars.
Oh, okay.
For all intents and purposes. And then we dealt them the finishing blow in 1898 with the Spanish-American War, where we just wiped the floor with them.
USA. USA. USA.
Indeed.
Anyways,
and then so you have you have the Triple Entente, and then you have the Triple Alliance, where Italy's just kind of in there but not in there because their number one adversary is technically part of their alliance, which is why eventually
Italy pulls some fucked up shit before the end of this.
They flip-flopped all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah, so once you take Italy out of that, that's why eventually Germany and Austria.
The US did.
Germany and Austria will just be called or get referred to as the Central Powers because if you look on the map, they're just right smack dab in the middle of everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's the core of the two sides.
Well, yeah,
going
when
into
you
things.
get down to it, it was Germany and Austria and Italy in and out throughout the entire thing. And then there was everybody else. Well, and Turkey. But when they drew the lines, it really came down to there were 3 or 4 countries centralized around Germany and Austria.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have the major players are the ones I listed.
Yes. Yes.
Other than obviously the United States towards the end when we come in.
And there was the whole
impact.
scuffle going on over in the Asian areas with Japan, but
Yeah,
we're not
but
gonna
most
hit
of that was, like
too
you said,
hard.
Like I told you guys, the colonial stuff mostly gets wrapped up by the end of the first few months of the war. Simply because the Germans can't get to any other colonies because they're cut off by a naval blockade. So you can't reinforce those possessions. So, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as Britain and France shut down the waterways through because they were the only way out of that set of water. So there wasn't really a way past their blockade.
Yeah, hence it being a blockade. But anyways, then the next major thing you get in European politics on a broader scale is in the Balkans, the Balkan Peninsula, where the Ottoman Empire had ruled that area for centuries, going back to like the 1500s or something like that. But slowly, as the empire declined, little bits and pieces of it started breaking off. And up to the getting into the 20th century, you have the pieces that are broken off already were Greece, Romania, Serbia, Montenegro, which had never really been taken over. That's a whole other story. And then Bulgaria was starting to gain autonomy, and then you had Bosnia, which was this kind of piece that kind of just jutted up off of the rest of the core part of what was left of the Ottoman Empire, kind of into Austria.
And Bosnia is the big deal here. Bosnia
this is where we really becomes a central focus, where in 1908 the Austrians occupy Bosnia. Actually, I think they had been occupying it already. I forget when the occupation actually starts, but in 1908 they formally annex it, legally annex the territory.
Which you can imagine doesn't sit well with a lot of
Bosnians now.
Well, the thing is, Bosnia is a crazy ethnic mix of people, which is one of the reasons why historically there's so much crap goes down there, because there's so many different people.
Well, they're kind of a crossroads of everywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Bosnian Muslims, you've got Orthodox Serbians, you've got Catholic Croatians, all mixed together. And that's the big thing that will come up is the Serbians that live there, ethnic Serbians that live there. Well, the little kingdom of Serbia wants those Serbians to live in Serbia, and they now live in Austria, and there's going to be some tension over that. But even before that, the final death blows of the Ottoman Empire get struck right before the war. In 1911, the Italians and go into how weak the Italians are overall. It gives you an idea of how bad the Ottomans were. Basically seized Libya and some islands in the Aegean Sea. And then
the Italians were never really a military power.
Yeah, not since the days of Rome. But seeing
they're too
how
busy getting pasta out of their pockets, man.
Seeing how easily the Italians take over all that stuff, the smaller Balkan countries form an alliance. Most of them, I think all of them except Romania. It's called the Balkan League. And they basically all agree to just declare war on Turkey at once and try and take over as much as they can.
Look, we're going to take that place across the water. We're going to do it. Take up your arms and let's go.
Why are they Canadian?
I don't know. Why not?
Yeah,
they were the Canada of Europe.
Yeah, which they do.
What is Newfoundland?
Okay, to be fair, Newfoundland and Finland were also the Canada of Europe. Maybe they're more like the South Arkansas of Europe.
Moving on.
Yeah, okay.
You're surrounded by idiots. Moving on.
No, but the Balkan League forms in 1912, and they all just gang up on Turkey and drive them out to almost completely out of Europe. They basically just control the city of Constantinople.
Constantinople?
Yes.
Not Istanbul.
I'm not going to get into that.
It's nobody's business but the Turks.
Anyways, yeah, so they take over what's left of the Balkan Ottoman Empire. They kind of split it up. Only the Bulgarians aren't happy about the chunk they got. So, like a bunch of whiny bitches, they declare war on, I want to say it was either Serbia or Greece they declare on first, at which point all of the other Balkan countries, including Romania this time, declare war on Bulgaria, including the Turks, who decide they're going to try and get some of their shit back. And they basically just gangbang Bulgaria. I think it's over. The war was over in like a couple of weeks because they were literally surrounded.
I'm fairly certain there's a fair amount of streetwalker porn that gets recorded in Bulgaria today. So, apt.
You would know.
Interesting. Okay, but anyways, and that war takes place the following year, in 1913, and that leads to the like if you get your map pulled up, the borders that result at that point. The Turks actually do get a little bit back. The one important little bit they get is the city of Adrianople. Basically, their little enclave becomes a bigger enclave. Yeah. Do you have a map? Do you have a map pulled up?
Well, I was just giving it to you for reference.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know this map like crazy well. But yeah,
that's a little different than the one I pulled up.
Yeah, it's essentially the same map though. Yeah, you can get the idea. So that's basically what we end up. The maps you're looking at now are what we end up at this point. And there goes your beer.
Congratulations.
Oh, that's why we have paper towels.
Mm-hmm.
The true war crime.
Yeah. No, but like you said, basically the Balkans is basically this entire time a hotbed of activity. There's a bunch of assassinations that go on, a couple of coups, I think. So people in other countries are used to the Balkans as being a shit show, which is why when the Archduke gets assassinated, at first, nobody really gives a shit because stuff like that was always happening in that part of the world.
Wait, Ferdinand was...
When he was assassinated, the Archduke?
Yes, in Bosnia.
Yeah.
That's why Bosnia is the big deal.
Yeah, because...
I swear to God, we're almost there. We're working on it.
Well, because the people who would assassinate Archduke Franz Ferdinand were a group of Serbians, Bosnian Serbs, who wanted Bosnia to be part of...
Called themselves the Young Turks, didn't they?
No, that's a Turkish group. Hence the name.
Well, I'm stupid.
The group that Princip and the others were part of, although it was more a matter of they just decided to use them as a source of resources. They weren't really that closely attached to them, other than this similar, cause. It was a group called the Black Hand. That's what they called themselves. There was a formal name for it, but commonly known as the Black Hand.
It's kind of a great name for a terrorist organization.
It is.
It's very menacing. There's a little bit of mystery and intrigue there.
There's the question of what they stand for and why you should care.
In this time period, there's the question is it a black guy's hand?
That would be a no. But no, they were.
I don't know. I think Captain America could take on the Black Hand.
It was actually run by the head of the Serbian military intelligence agency, I believe, who was a big Serbian nationalist, big opponent of the sitting Serbian prime minister, whose name I think was Pasek. But he comes up with this plot to assassinate the Archduke, and sends these 6 guys back into Bosnia with some bombs, some guns, and some cyanide.
Wasn't this the grenade under the?
The grenade.
I would like to point out just real quick, because you brought up the cyanide. He cheaped out on the cyanide.
Definitely cheaped out on the cyanide.
He cheaped out on the cyanide. We'll get to it. We'll get to it later.
Though we are pretty much like.
We are pretty much there.
So setting the stage.
Order of events.
So he sends these guys into Bosnia. Though, a couple things one thing I want to mention before we get fully into this about the Russians going into this whole scenario. The Russians always kind of saw themselves as the protectors of the Christian states in the Balkans, vis-a-vis the Ottomans. They kind of set themselves up as their protectors, Serbia in particular. And when things like the occupation of Bosnia in 1908, and when Serbia kind of gets screwed over in the Balkan Wars, 1912, 1913, in the deals that divvied up the spoils. They called on the Russians to back them up, and the Russians, due to having just lost a war to Japan in 1905 and undergone a revolution, didn't have the muscle to throw around. And so they basically kind of failed the Serbs like 3 times in a row, and that very much weighed on the politics going into all this of, we can't do this again, we got to back them to the hilt this time. We got to make sure they got to know they can rely on us. We got to back these guys to the hilt. Yeah. These 6 guys get sent in. When the Serbian prime minister actually finds out that this is going on, contrary to what I think a lot of popular opinion is that the Serbians back these guys and let them go in, the prime minister actually goes to the intelligence guy, the head of the Black Hand or whatever, and tells him, we stop this shit.
Yeah, this was not supported by the official channels of the government.
Because they knew you're going to provoke a war, and they ain't going to be good for us. And then he actually finds out the names of a couple of the people who were involved. Actually tries to stop them even crossing into Bosnia, closes the border, tries to have them arrested at the border, but it's too late for that. And then when that
did what he could to try and
and then there's a large series of coincidences that led to this.
Yeah, and he even goes so far as to send a message
are accidental.
To I believe he tells his ambassador in Vienna to tell the Austrians when he found out that there's these group of guys who are going in there to commit an assassination. I forget whether or not he knew the target or not, and give them their names. But his guy in Vienna was basically like a Black Hand supporter or that level of an ardent nationalist and didn't want to do that. So he basically just kind of vaguely tells them that, it would be we're just kind of worried that I think the phrase he uses is some Bosnian Serb might load his gun rather than leaving it empty or something like that is how he phrases it. Just so utterly vague as to be a non-statement. So the message never actually gets to the
really
the
vague
Austrian
so that
government.
he can tell his boss, yes, I told them, but at the same time he didn't really tell them anything.
Yeah, which is why when this happens, Vienna has no frickin' idea it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. So
all right.
now we get into the ridiculousness of
the actual assassination.
The 28th of June, 1914.
Yeah, because the way I've heard it, he was assassinated like 4 different ways.
No. There were a couple of different attempts. There were even a couple times where he should have died, but managed to get away luckily. I believe actually out of the group that came after him, what was it? 2 of them actually had line of sight on him and wouldn't shoot him.
Well, also the motorcade that the Archduke was part of while he was visiting the city Sarajevo.
Which the thing that blows my mind is they published the route. I get that you want to put on a good face and smile for the people, but
it's a parade. Yeah,
it's
a
a tiny place. Word will spread. You'll get a crowd.
It was a parade route.
Okay. Before we go into the actual details of the events of the assassination, one thing that needs to be mentioned about the date. This is about the worst date an Austrian Archduke, the heir to the imperial throne, in fact, could have picked to visit the city, because June 28th is what's known to the Serbians as, read this right, St. Vitus Day. It marked the anniversary of a colossal defeat the ancient medieval Serbian kingdom suffered at the hands of the Turks, which led to their ceasing to exist as a kingdom.
That
so
is
just to remind
you,
well, and the Serbians.
The Turks made sure it was no one else's business.
Well, anyways.
So this is kind of a kick in the nuts to begin with.
Yeah, this is kind of an extremely nationalistic day for the Serbs, and it's the man who represents the government that is currently ruling over them that they don't want visiting them on the day that they got their asses kicked. So yeah, bad day for him to be there in the first place.
It'd be like visiting Japanese dignitaries on Pearl Harbor Day.
That's actually not that weird.
Or Americans.
Yeah. Well, that's
going
a different set of circumstances.
Or Americans going and visiting on the day.
We don't currently rule Japan with an iron fist, so
anymore.
A little bit different.
Anymore. Because there was a time there where, the fist may not have been
if
apparent,
that giant robot fight had gone just 2 rounds longer.
I never actually found out how that went. I know it was planned and it
never happened.
Didn't it?
No.
Oh, I'm so disappointed. Because
no one developed a goddamn giant robot. We're America. We're too fat to do that.
You mean nobody in America developed one? Because Japan already had one, and that's what launched it.
Anyway, all right. So, 28th, the Archduke and his wife Sophie are there visiting, both as a formal state visit to kind of inspect the local troops and stuff.
And he was also doing a series of military inspections while he was down there. They bundled it.
Yeah, and also just kind of as a vacation, because this is a minor side note. His wife Sophie, due to the fact that she was only a countess of a not well-off family rather than actual royal princess, nobody else in the Austrian court wanted him to marry her, to the point that when they actually did get married, he had to sign a document that said none of their children would be in the line of succession.
That is a truly dick move by the in-laws.
Very dick move, yes. So this was she was always shunned at most royal events. Never allowed to stand next to him or anything like that. She always had to be way down on the end. Kind of Jon Snow her. So
keep that pimp hand strong.
So going with that analogy, Bosnia is basically the wall in the Night's Watch, the place where she can kind of just he can actually show her off and
So what you're telling me is that Bosnians are really fucking tall?
I honestly have no idea what the demographics are there.
I'd
like to make a joke, but I don't know
Jon
which way
Snow won't get laid.
All I got out of that is that winter's coming.
Game of Thrones, bitch. Game of Thrones, bitch. Game of Thrones, bitch. Game of Thrones, bitch.
Okay. That whole tangent was my fault.
Yes, it was.
It's usually you guys. That one was me.
Yeah, it was.
Anyways,
welcome to our level.
You achieve one side conversation point.
Anyways,
you're getting cut.
All right.
Good.
So the Archduke's kind of motorcade.
We will leave all references to your getting cut.
The Archduke's motorcade is moving through the city on the parade route, and it's in their car. It's him, his wife in the back seat, the driver obviously up in the front, along with the I believe the military governor of Bosnia, and then there's various other officials in the couple of cars behind them.
I know that the lead car was supposed to be the security vehicle, and I know that the original plans called for 6 specialized guards, and they ended up with 1.
Yeah, something like that. That's right.
Yeah, and something interesting I learned from you just recently, because I've always had a misnomer about how the motorcade was attacked. I'd always heard that it was a botched throw, but you've come to correct me that no, it was an amazing throw.
It was an amazing throw.
It's just apparently Franz Ferdinand had levels in Jedi, and he didn't tell anybody.
Yeah, the first assassin, the first guy, throws a bomb, basically.
Grenade,
bomb, whatever you want to call it. A small explosive device full of shrapnel.
It's not what you would think of as a grenade, but for lack of a better term.
It was a grenade.
Yeah.
It was a handheld-sized device, not
that exploded
thrown explosive.
Shrapnel everywhere.
Yeah, thrown explosive.
But as you said, well, first the driver sees the thing and starts speeding up. So he's moves the car somewhat out of alignment of where it should have been for the bomb to hit him.
So it lands right in his lap.
Well, it kind of starts to fly behind the Archduke, who then sees it and manages to swat the thing out of the air behind them, where it then promptly ends up under the car. I think it's under the car or next to the car behind them.
Under the car. It disables the next vehicle.
And injures several people, both I think on the street and
I believe that was the car loaded with dignitaries.
Yeah. At which point, the motorcade proceeds to its destination, the Sarajevo town hall, where the mayor gives a speech, where oddly enough, he had forgotten to change the speech any or think about what he was saying. So there's a line in the speech about everyone in Sarajevo being happy he was there or something like that.
Oh,
right after
overjoyed.
Awesome.
Yeah. After which the Archduke decides to change the itinerary. He wants to go and visit the hospital and visit the people who are injured in the explosion. The gentlemanly thing to do. So he tries to get Sophie to stay behind because of the possibility of somebody else, trying something.
Yeah,
Although the military governor tells him he's not concerned because if there's anything he knows about the Serbian radicals, if they're not capable of more than one assassination attempt in a day.
They'll only try
how little
once
did
and
he
give
know?
up.
Yeah. But Sophie insists on coming with him, but her place is with him. So they get back in the cars and start off. Well, they should be going to the hospital. Unfortunately, they had never uncleared the original route that the parade was supposed to take, and the driver got confused.
Ended up on a wrong street.
Well, he ends up taking the original route, the original marked route, because it was actually Franz Ferdinand's personal driver, not somebody local, so he'd never been in Sarajevo before. So he just sees, he gets confused, sees the original marked route, and starts following that. And as they go along this route, it's 3 other individuals who were part of the group see him, but don't do anything. They all kind of chicken out. 2 of them, I think, later on make excuses, and the one admits they're just kind of chickening out. Although I think those 3 were, correct myself, those 3 saw him on the route to the town hall, on the original route. Once they leave the town hall,
that's actually pretty amazing that
which are the
3
2 that take the
assassins
cyanide?
chickened out.
Well,
2 of them took cyanide?
well, there's I know Princip himself took cyanide, and then there's one other guy. The one guy, when this is jumping forward a little, but when they go to catch him, jumps off a bridge into a river to try to jump himself.
Yes,
but the
this is
river is
the one
only
I
like a
remember.
1.5 feet.
Yep.
Oh, and he goes flat.
and the cyanide's expired, so it just makes him vomit a lot. So he just jumps into this shallow, shitty river, begins vomiting and shitting himself.
Breaks his ankle or something like that. Yeah.
Begins vomiting and shitting himself. Yeah, no, he had a great day.
Oh yeah. But anyways, so once they're on the, they've gone.
The moral of the story is, kids, don't skimp on your suicide pills.
Indeed.
Make sure they're not expired.
Spare no expense.
Yeah, no, but once they're on the
bullet
on the route
says
to
your ankle is important.
Supposed to be going to the hospital, end up on the original route. The fourth member, or at this point the fifth member of the group, again sees him drive by, chooses to do nothing. Eventually, the Bosnian governor in the front seat realizes what's going on, that they're going the wrong frickin' way, and tells the driver to stop and you need to turn around. So they stop the car, shifting the gears, gets ready to turn around. Just as they stop right next to the leader of the group, number 6, Gavrilo Princip, who happened to be standing outside.
Getting lunch.
Outside of a cafe. The whole issue is whether or not it was or was not a sandwich he was eating or not, but that's entirely unimportant.
The fate of the world rested on a sandwich.
It doesn't matter whether he was eating a sandwich or not, but there's a debate about it.
If Princip hadn't gone for that sandwich,
if
he hadn't been at that cafe.
Well, it's more a matter, because the cafe was on the parade route, so he was going to be there anyways. It was more a matter of he got done in the cafe and was coming out of the cafe just because I believe he had heard that the Archduke was going to be going to the hospital, not along the route. So he went into the cafe to get something to eat because he thought he wasn't going to be coming by. But then just as he's leaving the cafe, because of the mistake with the driver, not only does the Archduke driving by, but the driver stops the car because of what the governor said, 5 feet in front of him.
I just picture...
That sounds like a plant.
I just picture full-on Marlon Brando during the filming of The Godfather. Princip, gun in one hand, sandwich in the other.
Only if this were The Godfather, it would be an orange, not a sandwich.
No. Marlon Brando during the scene where he's talking about over Fredo's body, and it's super serious, and it's that low-angle shot. The reason it's a low-angle shot is because immediately below what you can see, Marlon Brando is holding a massive fucking sandwich. There are pictures of this. He was taking bites of it in between takes.
Because he would not let go of the sandwich.
Oh, lovely.
Marlon MFing Brando.
Sandwiches aside,
sandwiches and plants
sees the Archduke's car, pulls out his pistol, and fires 2 shots. One of them hits the Archduke in the chest, in one of the lungs. The other one is too low, hits the door, goes through, and hits Sophie in the inside of the leg in nicks an artery.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why.
At which point,
it's a weird note. At least she left a pretty corpse.
That's a weird note. Considering some of the things you get me on, that's a weird note.
Open casket is an option for her. For an assassination, that's not always a choice. Ask the Kennedys.
All right. Well, anyways, immediately after the shooting,
people died.
Yeah, Kennedys.
Yeah. After he takes the shots,
and Ferdinand's.
Princip, as you said before, tries to take the cyanide capsule, but it's old and just makes him sick.
Expired.
As he's being wrestled by a member of the crowd, tries to grab him. Oh, I forgot. He actually tries to shoot himself first. I always forget about that detail.
Wait,
he tries to shoot himself, but then a member of the crowd grabs him, and then in the struggle, he pulls out the cyanide and tries to take the cyanide, and that doesn't work, and then he gets arrested.
Yeah. Never cheap out on your cyanide.
Wrong.
If you're going to try and overthrow a government, don't cheap out on the cyanide.
Yeah. But
I thought he just shot himself wrong.
Immediately after the shots go off, the governor in the front seat kind of looks around, looks at the Archduke, and that doesn't see any obvious signs of injury, so orders the car to just turn around and keep going. But then
at least they were going to the hospital.
Yeah. Well,
too soon.
What? How is it too soon?
It's been more than 100 years, dude. I think
about 105.
Yeah. Anyways, as we start driving off, a trail of blood starts coming out of the Archduke's mouth. Which point,
because that's always a sign of good health.
Yeah.
That's his humors adjusting themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know. According to Hollywood, that's just because he got hurt. He may have stubbed his toe.
God. No, but then at which point Sophie starts crying out, for heaven's sakes, what happened to you? At which point she immediately kind of passes out and slumps over into his lap. Well, that's what immediately. She immediately slumps over her head into his lap.
Their final moments are kind of like an epic level romance.
Yeah, you would think the pain in the leg would have overridden.
Oh no! That's one of the bizarre things about being shot. They've done all kinds of weird studies about this, like the way people react. Looking at like ER statistics,
the adrenaline and such.
Well, no, people will take like a through and through to the leg or like the arm, shoulder, somewhere where it's not like vitally wounding them. They'll fall to the ground and just act disabled because that's what they think a gunshot does to you. When really they're fairly stable, they're pretty much fine.
I actually have relevant stories, but we don't have the time to get into it. So, continuing onwards.
I just want to read this little narrative, like you said, about their final moments here.
Yeah.
Suddenly, a stream of blood came spurting out of Ferdinand's mouth. Sophie cries out, "For heaven's sake, what happened to you?" She then slumps over unconscious into her husband's lap. Sophie dear, don't die," the Archduke calls to her. "Stay alive for the children." When other members of the party
don't laugh.
When the other members of the party go over and struggle to open his tunic to see where he's been hit.
Don't laugh. This is serious.
He says, "It's nothing. It's nothing." And then within a minute or two, they were both confirmed.
What is wrong with you?
Yeah, dude. What the hell?
I'm sorry. It was mostly your anger at the. I was laughing.
What was he doing?
I was laughing at the "for the children" because everybody trots out for the children. But as soon as you started to get angry, that made it all the more hilarious.
You're laughing at a dying parent's wish to be that the other parent lives in order to spare their children the cruelty of growing up alone?
That wasn't it at all. It was the trotting out of the "for the children." I've been on the internet too long.
Context, man. Context.
And I admit, it's a horrible thing that happened.
People died, man.
That's getting to be a thing with me, isn't it?
Yeah. It's a t-shirt. One last thing about Princip here. When he was apprehended and brought in, by all accounts, according to him, he had no intentions of shooting Sophie. His only target was the Archduke.
Yeah. And
he truly regretted that she died.
It was when he lay dying of tuberculosis in prison in 1916.
Yeah, no, it dodges death sentence by being 3 months too young to get it, but dies in prison anyway.
Yeah. But anyways, they done interviews with him or whatever, and obviously the war is well underway at that point, and he sees all the carnage and death, and they ask him if he regretted what he did, and he's dying to his dying day. Only thing he ever regretted about what he did was that Sophie was killed. That's the only thing he regretted. None of the rest of it.
He was too young to get a death sentence.
He was 19, I believe.
19.
There was an age limit at some point?
Yeah. Different laws, man.
Oh, yeah. Different places have different laws on that.
Well, as far as I know, America's never had problems with
we've had
anyone
huge
over
problems
18.
sentencing children.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone over 18.
Well, different ages, different places.
Different place, different time.
Okay.
You got to remember, in a lot of places, the age of majority, for voting on that, to the extent that people were allowed to vote, or just for adulthood, was 21 still in a lot of places. Well, 18 was actually
hell, to this
young.
day, the mark of adulthood in Japan is 20.
adulthood has always been different from drinking age. And that's something I have to constantly remind myself of.
Well, I mean, depending on where you are, drinking age,
if
he can hold the cup, can't he?
Drinking age?
He can hold the cup.
If you can look over the bar, you can get a drink, yeah.
We put whiskey in a sippy cup, and then I thought about it, and I fixed myself up one.
Anyways.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap things up here for the time being. We'll pick it up again in part 2.
Next time we'll get into the collapse of Europe, really.
Yeah.
And actual declarations of war, because we never actually got out of the intro.
To top it off, one little tidbit, it just kind of popped in my head. We always think of this as like the inevitable start of the war. There were actually a couple of other points in the previous years where war very well could have broken out earlier.
Well, I think we've all agreed that there are many things that have led to this, and there's many starts to this, and if we really were to break this down, we could do an entire series on nothing but the First World War.
There's a certain school of thought about World War I that argues that it was inevitable. Just the nature of treaties and alliances at the time, sooner or later, somebody was going to stub their toe and take it out on someone.
I would just mention, just real quick, as a final cap here, some things that could have led to some very different conflicts. Between France and Germany, you had the Moroccan Crisis. Both of them wanted pieces of Morocco, fought over that, which ended diplomatically. Then you also had one where Britain and Russia almost went to war, which could have led to something when Japan was fighting Russia, and the Russians decided to send their Atlantic fleet around to the Pacific to help in the fight. What's known as the Dodger Bank incident happened, where the Russian ships thought they saw a Japanese ship, while they thought they saw that in the North Sea in Europe. I have no idea. But it turned out to be a British ship, and they opened fire on it. And that came very close to sparking a war. That would have been a very different set of alliances. Those are the two big ones. The other one was... I forget what it was called, but it was basically Britain and France fighting over territory in Sudan.
Britain and France are always bitching at one another.
Well, yeah, that's one of the weirdest things about World War I is that, just the latter half of the 19th century going up to that in particular, the fact that Britain and France, which have been enemies for so long due to the emergence of Germany and some other weird shit, and all of a sudden ended up on the same side. But... yeah, that was another one that could have been another Britain-France war. They were fighting over territory in Sudan.
All right.
But, and with that, I think we're done.
I think we'll pick it up in part 2.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Next time on Informed and Confused.
Motherfucker, listen to what I'm saying. I'm saying sometimes you know what you know, sometimes you don't know what you know, and sometimes you know what you think you know, but you don't know.
Mosquito genocide is what you're talking about here.
Small enough with the electron microscope you can even see the wanted posters.